What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Asylum hard mode main tank build. So this is going to be focused on a progression style guild, so this isn't really going to be optimized for speed runs or score runs. This is going to be more based on basically helping you and your team, give yourself the best chance of success. You're not really going for speed, you're not really going for score, you're just going for a clear. So this build will hopefully help you be able to accomplish that run a little bit smoother, a little bit easier that way. So this is the main tank build, so you're going to be focusing in on how we're going to tank ohms. So we'll be going over pretty much everything that we need to know in order to make this build, so skills, gear, CP points, things like that. And instead of going through a rotation video or a parse, instead I will kind of explain what each ability is there for. Each ability is here for a specific reason, and where you use each ability, if you can swap any of these out depending on the specific where you are in the progression, and if there are any sort of alternative gear sets that you might want to use instead, depending on the needs of your group. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to first start off with our Monster Helm set. So I like to go with Lord Wardens when I main tank ohms, and that's mainly because Lord Wardens gives me more consistent resistances. So the one piece gives me spell and physical resistance, and then 2 piece whenever I take damage. I have a 50% chance to summon a Shadow Orb for 10 seconds that increases the physical resistance of you and your allies within 8 meters by 3870. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. So Lord Wardens is mainly here for the additional resistances for yourself. It's a little bit better than Bloodspawn, and it is a lot more consistent because it's a lot easier to get the proc off. It's basically whenever you take damage. So it's much easier to make sure you have the full Lord Warden proc open and active while you're tanking ohms, and having that additional physical and spell resistance will help mitigate the damage a little bit more. Now I did mention that Bloodspawn is a potential alternative that you might want to consider using. The stamina regen is not really going to help you too much just because you're blocking pretty much, not necessarily all the time, but most of the time. So obviously stamina regen drops to 0 when you block, so stamina regen is not going to be as useful. And then a 2-piece, when you take damage, you have a 6% chance to generate 14 ultimate and increase your physical and spell resistance by 6450 for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So you can see here that is a much lower chance to proc. Well, you do get additional ultimate and you do get a nice boost to physical and spell resistance. Because of that low chance to proc and you're not having any sort of bats on you, you're not going to get a lot of procs of Bloodspawn going, so it's going to be a lot less consistent physical and spell resistance. Now, on the other hand, you do get some more ultimates, so you are able to use Warhorn a lot faster. You'll be able to get your Magma Shell up a lot faster if you're using Bloodspawn, but you are giving up a little bit of additional survivability throughout the entire fight, because you do lose out on the almost 3,000 spell and physical resistance from the Lord Warden's one-piece effect there. So that's why I prefer Lord Warden instead of Bloodspawn. Now, there is another Monster Helm set that you might want to also consider using. That's going to be Earthgore. When you heal a friendly target that is under 50% health, and that does include you, you conjure a pool of quenching blood underneath them, which soaks up one enemy placed effect instantly and heals all friendly targets in the area for, in this case, 34,500 health over 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 35 seconds. So this is a fairly nice set to use. It's a nice burst heal. So if you heal yourself, with Green Dragon Blood while you're at under 50% health, that's normally when you would use Green Dragon Blood anyways, you'll be able to proc it and you'll get a nice burst heal over 6 seconds. And while the cooldown does seem like a pretty long time, 35 seconds is basically the duration between different storms of the heavens, so you'll know that you'll be able to at least get one proc between storm of the heavens. So that's pretty much how it works there in terms of timing. So it's not going to be useful all the time because, again, you are limited to one proc per storm of the heaven mechanic. But when you do get the proc, it is nice to keep yourself healed up all the way, particularly if he does another light attack right afterwards, so that way you can continue to get additional healing from the Earthgore proc. But again, just like with using Bloodspawn, you do give up that spell and physical resistance from that one piece. You do gain additional 2% healing done, and that does affect your self heals, so that does make your Green Dragon Blood and your Vigor a little bit stronger. So you do get a little bit additional heal that way. So that's the Monster Helm set. Now for our 5-piece sets, the first 5-piece set we're going to be using is going to be Plague Doctors. You will not be using Eben, and that's just because most of the team is going to be too far away for Eben to reach them, so it's kind of wasted to have Eben on the main tank when you're tanking Ohms. So we're going to go with Plague Doctor instead, just for the very selfish build. You know, you want as much health as you possibly can when you're taking Ohms, because he does hit pretty hard, so you just want to make sure you have Plague Doctor there. Another option you might want to consider using is going to be Green Pact. It's not as strong as Plague Doctor in terms of how much health it gives you, but it does give you some health regen, which does help out a little bit. Typically speaking though, you will be a vampire, so it's not going to be quite as strong as Plague Doctor there. Now for the second 5-piece, we're going to be using Torug's Pact. It's a crafted set which requires 3 traits in order to craft it. So we're going with Torug's Pact mainly for the weapon enchant, in the increase in your Crusher enchant. So the off-tank might not be using Crusher. Typically speaking, the off-tank will be running double weakening instead in most cases, or they might be running Crusher to help out with the mini-bosses, but Torug's Pact is generally going to be a little bit more useful when it comes to applying your Crusher enchant. Now I know there is a bug where if the off-tank applies their Crusher to Ohms and you apply your Torug's Crusher, it will actually refresh their Crusher enchant and not apply the stronger Torug's Pact enchant. So there is the risk of running into that bug if you decide to use Torug's Pact. So that's something that you just want to keep in mind there. Now you can replace Torug's Pact with a different set if you would like. One of the sets that I would consider using is going to be Eben, just to maximize the amount of health that you're getting. It does mean you have a lower Crusher enchant, but in terms of survivability, Eben is going to be a lot more stronger, just because you have a little bit more health that way. Another potential option that you might want to consider using is if once you get a little bit more comfortable with the fight, that is going to be Alkosh. You just have to make sure to time the Alkosh proc when the Ohms is not shielded in order to actually make use of the debuff from Alkosh. This is going to be more for when you're more comfortable with the fight, and that you need that little bit of additional DPS in order to push them from execute from 25% down to 0%, and you're comfortable surviving, because you do lose some survivability when you are running Alkosh instead of Torug's Pact, because you do lose on the max health, you do lose on the spell resistance, and your weakening enchant is going to be a little bit weaker, but it does add a nice bit of debuff, so it does help you out if you do feel like you need that additional DPS there. And then one final set that you might also want to consider, and it's going to be one that you're not really going to be actually think of, is going to be Sanctuary. Sanctuary is here because you get additional healing received by 12%. It's a 10-meter radius, so it's really only going to affect you and maybe your tank healer, but the increased healing received is going to be pretty strong. It's going to be very useful for you in order to heal yourself back up to full if you get hit when you take a hit from Ohms, or if you manage to get hit by their Scalding Breath move. It is something that you could consider using in place of Torug's Pact. I personally would not recommend running Sanctuary, just because it's not entirely all that useful. You do have your own healer, and they will be able to heal you up to full fairly easily, as long as they are paying attention. So that's just my view on using Sanctuary instead. And then you could also use Dragonguard if you would like. There's nothing wrong with running Dragon. It will give you more Warhorns. You'll be able to get Magma armor up a little bit faster that way, so you'll be able to use it more often, save your skin a little bit. But in my opinion, Torug's or Eben is going to be a little bit better compared to Dragon. Again, Dragon and Alkosh, those are two sets that you might end up using when you're a little bit more comfortable with the fight itself. Now for our traits and enchants. So for our small pieces, we're going with Sturdy, so it reduces the cost of block, which helps basically improve our stamina sustain there, because you will be blocking fairly often, and you will be holding block for pretty long periods of time, so it's just nice to have that cost reduction with block. I have health enchants on all of our small pieces except for the shoulders here. That's because I am a Dark Elf, so I do need the additional stamina enchant to make sure my stamina is higher than my magicka. And then for our large pieces, I still go with Infused with the Prismatic enchants, so I get a little bit more resources out of our large pieces that way. Now for our jewelry pieces, I have 2 shield plate enchants that reduces the cost of block, and then I have a reduced stamina cost enchant here to reduce the cost of my taunt and heroic slash and any other stamina abilities that I might be using, particularly Vigor, which I like to have on as a nice heal over time when I'm tanking ohms. So you can go with any sort of combination between reduced stamina cost and reduced block cost. You might also want to consider using something like Reduce Potion Cooldown glyphs, so you're able to drink your tripods a little bit faster, because if you have to have 3 of them, it reduces your cooldown time by 15 seconds, so you're able to drink a potion every 30 seconds as opposed to every 45 seconds. So that'll just help out your sustain by a good margin, particularly if you are an Argonian. Now for our traits, I have 3 healthy here just so we have more health, but you do have several options when it comes to your traits here. So you can go with something like Triune. So for additional magic and stamina, and you're giving up a little bit of health there. You can go with Infused to make your enchants a little bit stronger. It's really, really powerful when you combine it with Potion Cooldown glyphs, because then you drop your cooldown by 24 seconds instead, basically cutting your Potion Cooldown in half. So that's pretty strong using Infused instead. You can also go with Harmony instead, which boosts the amount of healing and resources returned when you use a synergy. So typically speaking, you will have a Blood Altar up on the field, so when you hit that Blood Altar synergy with like 1 or 2 Harmony pieces, you get a really big heal, especially if you're using Overflowing Altar. So that's really nice to have as well. So those are kind of your options when it comes to traits. Now we are running 2 Sword boards on our front and back bar. I have Nirnhoned on my shields, but you can go with something like Infused or Sturdy or Reinforced if you want to go that route. And then for our weapons, we have an Infused with a Crusher on the main hand, and you can go with Infused Crusher on the offhand as on the back bar as well if you'd like. I have a Weakening Enchant here. It's kind of up to you if your tank healer or your off tank or is running Weakening, then you might not need to run Weakening at all. In a lot of progression style guilds, it's usually the tank healer is running 2 Weakening Enchants and the main tank is running 2 Crusher Enchants. So you can kind of play around with that and work it out with your own raid team that way. Now for a character sheet, I am a Dark Elf, but in terms of racial choices, Argonians and Imperials are the best races for tanking, just because Argonians get a little bit of additional sustain and they get additional healing received and done. So it's really nice for their self-heals and heals that they get from the healer. And Imperials just get additional health and stamina, so that's always very helpful to have here. Now in terms of attributes, I have this distribution here, again because I am a Dark Elf, so I do need to make sure my stamina is higher than my Magicka, because I do have 9% max stamina boost and only 9% max Magicka boost and 60% max stamina boost. So I do need to play around with my attribute points a little bit to make sure my stamina is higher than my Magicka. So generally speaking, I like to hit at least 40k health while I'm taking ohms. Higher is always better, so you can see here I'm almost at 45k health, which is really nice to have. And then I just put points into stamina and Magicka accordingly until my stamina is higher than my Magicka. That's just how I like to do things, but your specific attribute distribution might vary depending on if you are an Imperial or an Argonian or some other race. Now, Mundus Stone, going with Atronach, that's pretty plain and simple. It's pretty much the standard for tanks. We just want a little bit more Magicka regen in order to, be able to use Green Dragon Blood more frequently. And then for food, again, pretty standard, cut and dry, purple food here, and we are a vampire. I do recommend dropping down to stage 2 vampire, so that way you're able to maintain the regen passive. If you want, you can drop down to stage 3 if you want the undeath passive to reduce the damage you take when your health is low. It's up to you. It kind of depends on how well you feel tanking the fire from the execute phase, because you do take more damage as a vampire. So you might not even need to use a vampire. The main tank from Mayflower is not a vampire when she tanked ohms. So you don't necessarily need to be a vampire, but it is helpful for the additional regen and the undeath passive. Now for our skills. Starting off with our front bar, we have Pierce Armor, our taunt, Heroic Slash, Fragmented Shield for the increased major mending uptime, Balance for our major and resistance buffs, as well as some additional Magicka sustain as well. You're going to have to be a little bit careful when you use Balance, because you are giving up some health, so that's something you want to take into consideration. Now, some people might say, well, why not use Meditate, either of the morphs from Meditate? And that's because you can't block while you're using Meditate. And while you do gain major protection from the Liberation, it's only 30% reduction, and you're not gaining the block reduction. The base is 50, plus whatever is tacked on from your one-handed shield passive. So it ends up being a lot more mitigation just to use balance and block rather than rely on deep thoughts. Just because Ohms does light attack fairly often, and if you miss a light attack, you're gonna die, and there's no way that meditate is going to be able to heal you through that damage that easily. So it's just better off, in my opinion, to just stick with balance instead. Then we have Efficient Purge. This is for Execute, to purge the fire off you. You don't need to run this if your healer is running it for you, but I like to have it here just in case our healer goes down. It's also used to clear the Scalding Breath debuff that is applied to you, as well as a Storm to Heavens debuff if you manage to get hit by that. It'll clear the debuffs, which allows, which basically clears those debuffs. Really useful to have, because Scalding Breath will shatter your armor, and then Storm the Heavens will slow you down and does apply a small dot on you, so you do want to cleanse those immediately. And for ultimate, we have Magma Shell. This is going to be basically the, oh crap, I need to survive because my healer is down or something like that, so I like to have Magma Shell here for those situations. And for our back bar, we have a Ranged Taunt, Inner Rage, Green Dragon Blood, Echoing Vigor, Engulfing Flames for the additional fire damage. The more Mag Blaze you have, the better off, or the more fire damage you have, I should say, the stronger Engulfing Flames is. You don't necessarily need to use Engulfing Flames if you do not want to. You can like move Purge back here and get rid of Engulfing Flames and put Absorb Magic back on the front bar if you'd like. It's kind of up to you, but every little bit of DPS does help, particularly if you are having difficulty meeting the DPS checks. Engulfing Flames is really nice to have. And then I have Elusive Mist here. Elusive Mist, I found, can be quite helpful when you need to basically get rid of, for example, the debuff that Lothus puts on you when he hits you with the Filing Blast. It does give you a slight slow, especially to Storm the Heavens, so you do want to get rid of it. So you could use Elusive Mist, and it also reduces the damage you take by 75%. Now, just like with Meditate, you do not get the block with this, so you do lose out on the 50% mitigation, but because this reduces damage by 75 versus 30%, Elusive Mist is a little bit better than Meditate in terms of that regard. Plus, it also gives you Major Expedition, so it's a little bit easier to kite the Storm the Heavens, which is typically when you're going to be using this skill anyways. And then Aggressive Warhorn, you're going to be using this as much as you can. Obviously, you kind of want to be a little bit aware of the situation. Sometimes it's not a good option to run Warhorn because too many DPS are down, or they're off trying to kill a sphere, so not all of them are going to get the buff, so you do want to be a little bit aware of when you use your Warhorn. And even if you it's not an opportune time, you might want to use it anyways just to maintain minor toughness if you don't have a Warden healer healing you, for example. Now for our champion points, pretty self-explanatory. All of these are pretty cut and dry, pretty standard across all of our tanking builds. 65 into Arcanist, 56 into Tenacity, we have 56 into Shadow Ward, 40 into Tumbling, and 23 into Warlord. I have 11 into Sprinter here, but you can kind of put those 11 into Warlord if you would like. It's kind of, or you can put them back into Arcanist to get 75 into Arcanist. It's kind of up to you what you want to do with that. For our blue CPs, we have 100 Blessed, 81 Elfborn, just to help out our heals. Then you can put the remainder really wherever you'd like. I recommend getting Perfect Strike, so you want at least 30 points into the ritual. So put them into Precise Strikes to get a little bit of additional crit healing done from using your Vigor. And then for our red CPs, you will be taking, I actually have to shift this around a little bit. You will be taking pretty close damage between magical damage and physical damage. So Ohms' light attack is physical damage, Storm to Heavens is magic damage, and I believe Lothus' Defiling Blast is magic damage, and Felms is Teleport Strike. Does leave a dot on you, so that's why we have a couple of points into Thick Skin. We're actually going to have 40 into Thick Skin. So that's kind of where everything kind of falls into place there. So that's pretty much where everything is. So we're going with a balanced approach: 64 into LA, Defender, and Hardy, 40 into Thick Skin. You're not really taking that much damage from the Ohms dot, or Felms dot, I should say, so you can even drop this a little bit further to 31%, and then put 25 into Quick Recovery, or 23 into Quick Recovery, I should say. It's kind of up to you, however you want to deal with that. And then 66 into Ironclad, just because the light attack is obviously direct damage, and Storm to Heavens is also direct damage, so that just helps mitigate damage that way. So the general idea is kind of go for a balanced approach, invest more heavily into Ironclad, but you don't also want to ignore Thick Skin, because there is a dot that can be applied to you from Felm's Jump if it's kind of placed incorrectly. So it's nice to have a little bit of additional mitigation from Thick Skin if you're going that route. And then you do want some additional healing received, so 23 quick recovery, 2 into Bastion here, just because the 2 points will let us hit that jump point here versus if we put them anywhere else. Right, and then for potions, I like to use Tri Potions. Swap over to my potions. You can use Tri Potions here, but there is a potion that I do want to mention here, and that's going to be Essence of Lingering Health. So this gives you a nice heal over time, plus it gains you Major Vitality, which increases the healing that you take by 30%. So this is nice just to have additional heal over time going, taking the whole time during the fight. It doesn't restore any resources, so if you are not an Argonian, you might not want to use this just because you want your tripods for additional sustain. But if you are an Argonian, then by all means, go use Essence of Lingering Health, because you will gain some resources back from your racial passive that way. So Essence of Lingering Health, let's go over to the alchemy table so I can show you how to make it, because it's not a standard potion you would expect to see. To make it using Beetle Scuttle, Butterfly Wing, and then is it Scrib Jelly. So this is how you can make the Essence of Lingering Health. And then your Tri Potions are obviously going to be your typical Mountain Flower, Columbine, and Bugloss, and that's how you get your tripod here. So that is pretty much the build itself. So you can see here that it's kind of centered around a balanced approach with self-heals with Green Dragon Blood and Vigor, and then a lot of survivability, some little tricks here. So you have Elusive Mist, for example, to help kite around Storm to Heavens. Then you obviously have Purge to help get rid of any debuffs you have. And then you have Engulfing Flames to help out with DPS. It's really nice to have Engulfing Flames. The 10% additional flame damage is noticeable. It's not going to make or break a run, but it is nice to have that additional debuff there. And again, if you would like, you can take off Engulfing Flames, put Purge here instead, and then you can put Absorb Magic here to gain that additional block reduction there if you would like. It's not absolutely necessary, and Absorb Magic does not actually heal you because you aren't getting hit by any spell projectiles unless you have Lotus on you for whatever reason. So it's not really useful here compared to some other trials for the heal ability there. So that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions about this build, about how to tank Ohms in hard mode Asylum, feel free to leave a comment below. I will try to get back to it as soon as I can. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.